Hey everyone, welcome. It is 1 minute till 5 o'clock, so we're going to get started here in just a moment. So we're going to give everybody opportunity to get logged on, and we're going to get started with tonight's after hours conversations to help directors thrive in the COVID-19 era. But before we do, I've got a little bit of housekeeping stuff I have to do. We're going to have a little bit of fun. So last month, during the month of May, we sent out a survey to all the directors in our area, and we said, we would love to hear your opinion. Help us ensure that what we're doing is meaningful to you. And we said we were going to give away 3 AMRO gift cards. So tonight, we're going to have a quick drawing. I need to know who exactly is going to be the recipient of these AMRO gift cards. So on live webinar, we're going to keep it transparent. So our winners of the 3 AMRO gift cards, we have Tim Oliver from Arkansas State University. Congratulations, Dr. Oliver. All right, number 2. We have Katie Hughley, Cleveland High School down in Mississippi. Katie, thank you for participating in the last winner of our $100 AMRO gift card drawing. We have Marcy Wells, Greenbrier Junior High School, another Arkansas person here. So congratulations to these 3 individuals. We'll be reaching out to you. So we had 140 directors participate in that survey, and thank you. That was so helpful to us at AMRO Music. Next little bit of housekeeping before we get going. Next week, we've got an incredible session lined up. We've got Marcia Neal is going to be joining us. If you don't know Marcia Neal, she travels all over the country speaking. She was formerly the fine arts coordinator for Clark County, which is in Las Vegas, one of the largest school districts in the country, and they have a vibrant program. We're going to be talking about recruiting ideas for the summer months. So come and join us next week. We'll be sending out that registration information, but it should be great. So that's enough for me. Let me turn it over. I want to hear from the gentlemen that are going to be joining us. Gentlemen, who are you? Where are you from? What do you teach? And then keep this live, keep things positive. What's something that's lifted your spirits here lately? Because we certainly seem to need some good news. So Barry, good afternoon.
Hey there. Hello to everybody. I'm Barry Schroble. I'm one of the band guys at Munford High School in Munford, Tennessee, over here on the left side of Tennessee, if you will. And it's just been wonderful reaching out to people and hearing people's responses to how they're combating this sea of just indecision that we happen to be in right now. And it's been very uplifting to hear the creativity and the dedication that so many people have. Not only in my local area, but literally across the nation. It's been exciting. I'm excited to move on forward with all of this.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. And Richie, good afternoon.
Hey everybody, Richie Williams. I'm the director of bands at Paragould High School over in Paragould, Arkansas, Northeast Arkansas. Teach with 3 great guys, Carlos Cerna, Josh Mobley, and Cody Ballard. This is my 12th year here at Paragould. I'm also on the ASBLA Executive Board as the Region 5 Chairman, and I'm also a board member for Dixie Band Camp. And something positive. Last time I was on, I said I've been losing weight and eating grilled chicken. Well, the next positive is I have been spending so much time with my kids. My son told me, it's time for you to get back to work, Dad. There you go.
Oh man, not how you intended for that to work out, but so glad you're getting to spend that time together. That's funny. So again, we've got both of you have been on before. Thank you so much for coming back to joining us. And I want to kind of set up to tonight's conversation. This is different than anything that we have done. In the past, it's been more of a panel. Tonight, we're going to release a document that we've been working really hard on and walk through this particular document and how educators can use it to have a conversation in their community. And I'm really excited about that. But I think we need to frame this thing out. The first thing is last week, we had a conversation about the CDC guidelines and how they relate to music educators. And this is really part 2 to that conversation. If you missed last week's, I'd encourage you to watch it because I think we set up and we reference a lot of the things we went through last week in today's document. So that really helps to frame the understanding. So I would encourage you to do that. Barry joined me last week and really did a great job. So let me go ahead and share with everybody what we've been working on. So for the past 2 weeks, we've been congregating as many resources as we can find into one folder on Google Drive. And then what we wanted to do is take it to that next level. And we wanted to create a document that educators could take and would allow them to be a template, an action plan that they can start a conversation with their parents, their community, their constituents, their administrators, whoever it is, to say, this is how I intend to teach music safely for the upcoming fall semester. So let me go ahead and show you everything. Now, we're going to share all of this with you. You're going to get the link to this Google Drive at the end of the conversation, and you're going to have access to these resources. But before we turn that over to you, I want you to know exactly what it is that you're looking at. So let me turn on our screen share here and show you what I've got on my screen. Here we go. So this is the Google folder that we've put together for everybody, and we have just been congregating these resources as they come to us. So again, everything that you might need to know, this is a great place to start. So we've got the folder with the CDC guidelines, and these are some of the ones that we talked about last week. We've got resources from various states. So Richie shared some great stuff from Arkansas, the checklist, the present directive, some frequently asked questions. So we're just trying to congregate this in a manner that's as easy for you as an educator to use. Now, the document that we've been working on is called Considerations for a Safe Return to the Instrumental Music Classroom. And let me get that opened up here. Again, you'll have access to all of this information at the conclusion of tonight's conversation. But I want to walk through exactly what this is, and then we're going to have some questions and answers on this particular thing. The first off is this document is written from the perspective of a music educator. So that means it can be shared with parents, administrators, school board, whoever it is. And really what its purpose is to help directors clarify their intentions for the fall to teach instrumental music education. Our thought is, rather than waiting for the directives to come from the top down, let's create a conversation from the bottom up. And we want that document to provide that opportunity for directors to be able to do that. Now, I'll be the first to admit, this is not legal advice. This is not health advice. I'm a professional in neither of those things. Simply what we did is we went through this litany of resources that you're going to see in a few moments, and we created this document that references all of them. So everything is cited, everything is sorted, is cited and sourced. What we simply wanted to do was to provide you one place to apply it to the music education classroom. And that's what we've got going on here. Now, just in case we have some people on here that this relates to, I want to say something to our choir teachers. We did not attempt to address choir, and that was intentional in this. It's not that we have forgotten about you, but I'm sure many of you saw earlier this week that the National Association of Teachers of Singing put out a statement that said that they stand by the webinar that was done on May 11th and the research that was done on May 11th. And until those national organizations continue to provide some more guidance, which I understand is coming, I know is coming through this Colorado State study, I'm simply not an expert or in a position to address some of the challenges that choir teachers are going to be facing. So on that regard, we're going to keep updating this document when we get more information. But for today, that's not a conversation that we're looking to tackle. However, choir teachers can go ahead and use this document and let it start being a template. So when you get more information, you can go ahead and dive in. So on that note, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go through this document section by section, so when you're reading, you know exactly what it is that you're looking at. So here's the table of contents, a little information about this document. I just went through it with all of you, exactly what this is and what it's intended for. So let's get started. Why music? I think it's so important that we always start all of our conversations with why music. You know, Barry, I think we live and breathe this every single day, but why is it important for us to start these conversations with non-music people to talk about the importance of music during this time?
That's a great question, Nick, and I just cannot tell you, I'll speak from my perspective and my program of how important music is, not only to the emotional well-being of the students that I'm so fortunate to teach, but also to our community and our school. It just bleeds over into literally everything. And at this point in time, we have to be very diligent to view our decisions for our programs based on what is in the line of health for our students that we're going to contact daily, but also emotional health. And music just connects us in so many ways, so many ways. And I think it's so important that we're all just absolutely dedicated, or if nothing else, convicted that music is going to be one of the main tools that sees our school and our communities through this COVID challenge. It's amazing what we've had to deal with, but we are the answer, I feel.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Barry. And I think it's so important. We don't assume that people who are non-musicians know this. And so we just got to communicate this so proactively to them. But yeah, I completely agree. So many of the things that we're going to have to overcome we can find those answers in music. So that's a great point. So that's why we open up with talking about why music. And again, we reference all of these studies that benefit students. And I think it's important that we be equipped to have these conversations right out of the gate. So Barry, thanks for framing that for us. We live it every day, but let's share it with those people that don't. Okay, the next section that we dive into this document, the $1 million question, is playing an instrument safe? And so again, you can see all of the different sources that we have cited here. But right now, the main one that we're addressing is the study that was done by the Vienna Philharmonic, and the statements that they made that there's no increased risk for people participating in music. And so you can see there's some studies there that you can read if you want to get in depth on that. I think they quoted 80 centimeters. And of course, this Colorado State University study, I think, is going to provide even more clarity and understanding for this conversation as well, specifically for inside the classroom. So you can read our response on that. You can read our considerations on playing an instrument. But Richie, let's talk about this. I mean, we can't take this for granted either. Why is it so important that we be actively talking about playing a musical instrument and its safety in the COVID-19 era?
Well, definitely, just like as you say on these references, and I want to say a shout out to you and the whole team that's put this together, and the Arkansas band directors and everybody else that I've kind of looked to see that's on here. You're really going to be impressed by all the different things that you can click on and be able to, not be information overload, but just be able to have something that you could always reference back to. So this is not just an opinion document. There's lots of good data there. But as far as is playing an instrument safe, I would be excited when that Colorado study comes out. But until that moment happens, we do a wonderful job of socially distancing in the band world. We already do that, and we've got to be that voice to our administrators and to those in charge of saying, hey, we can pull this off. We've been doing sectionals for forever. We know how to do that. We already know how to be a chamber teacher, whether it's for a marching band or a solo ensemble, for whatever you're doing. So
yeah, that's exactly right. And I think if we approach this with a non-music person, it's probably reasonable to think that their assumption is that we're blowing all of this air into the instrument, and so surely all of that air is escaping out of the instrument at the exact same rate, as well as everything that gets blown into that instrument. But anybody that's ever been into a band room knows that that's not really the case, is that we do have these instruments that escape and they trap these aerosols inside the instrument. So, then the conversation becomes, how do we disinfect the instruments? And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But, I think our non-music people, they probably are not aware of all of that part of music. Now, the people that are best equipped for this conversation, I do think, are the orchestra people. And we've got some information in here on orchestra. We talk about the ways to sanitize an orchestra instrument. But of course, since they don't breathe into their instrument, the risk of playing an orchestra instrument doesn't seem to be any greater than really any other activity where you're sitting in a chair. And so they've got a little bit of an additional benefit. And that's something that we address here as well for our orchestra people. Perfect. So again, anybody that's interested, you can see these are all the sources that we're citing. And as soon as we have the information from Colorado State, I suspect we're going to expand on this information even further. Let's talk about preventing the spread of COVID-19, and really where the rubber meets the road. The nuts and bolts of this is the classroom policies that we're going to implement and the expectations. So there's a couple of documents that we cited very heavily in this. One of them is the guidance for cleaning and disinfecting public spaces, workplaces, businesses, schools, and home. They provide some great information there on exactly what steps we need to do to keep our spaces clean. And then we also address some cleaning supplies that can be used in the classroom. One of which is isopropyl alcohol, which we did confirm in concentrations greater than 70% is on the EPA's list of suitable disinfectants for COVID-19. We also contacted the manufacturer of Steri-Spray, which is made by Super Slick, got their active ingredient, and I can't even begin to pronounce that, some sort of ammonium. And that is also on the approved list for the EPA. So we have done as much research as we can and can say that both of these active ingredients are on the EPA's list of approved COVID-19 disinfectants. So we started to outline some of the various classroom policies that directors might be asked to implement. So folks can see these, but let's dive in and talk about this a little bit. You know, Barry, why is it so important that we be thinking about these classroom policies right now and clarifying them with our administration?
Well, obviously, we're going to stay postured that we're protecting our children that we teach from any health hazard whatsoever, not just COVID-19, but as Richie said, we're the kings and queens of distancing and keeping things in a healthy nature. In our band rooms and the instruments, we teach that. We teach it day to day. So obviously, we're keep that as paramount in our mind to keep our kids safe. But we're also, because we're looked at as leaders in our community, not only for our music, but just as a leader in our community. But we're the trusted musician in our communities in most cases. We and of course all of our people that we work with professionally. And I think that the level of communication that we can provide different families, our teachers that we work with, and most certainly our building administrators as well as our district administrators, the more communication that we do have success with, the better off we're going to be. We've talked at times about the concerns that some individual families may have about whether they allow their child to come back to school in this time of challenge and all. If we do a great job of making sure that we have a plan and a directive and a resolve for these different challenges that we have on disinfecting and the distancing and the aerosol production and all of these things, then we're going to be successful. We have to debunk any misconceptions that are empowered by the media, if you will, or just by the lack of information and silence from us. So it's important that we communicate what these particular things actually mean and what they look like in a real world scenario.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Barry.
And Nick, if I can piggyback on that, if you can go before your administrator and show them, hey, we're already thinking about this, I'm already looking at this, that gives you so much more credibility, with your administrator to know that you're taking this just as serious, and you're not waiting for someone else to hand you something and tell you what to do. You can say, hey, these are things I'm already considering, so that'll definitely help you out.
I'll piggyback on you, Richie. That's a great comment, and it reminds me that just this morning I sent my administrator, my building administrator, a preview of this document, and she was overly excited and asked immediately when she could release it to the board to get the ball rolling to reopen the band program here at Mumford High School. So in my particular case, this is already working as its intended purpose.
Yeah.
So it's all about communication.
That's great, Barry. So again, you're just leading that conversation up as opposed to waiting for it to come down. So this is great.
We can't wait. We cannot wait. It's time to act. And just as you said so eloquently, we've got to push the information up. We can't wait on it to come down.
Yeah. So again, none of these things are things that we just pulled out of thin air. We simply congregated them from all of these CDC resources and other guidelines and made them applicable to the music education classroom. So everything that you're seeing here is just stuff that we've congregated. So you can see, I'm sure by now everybody has read some of the classroom policies. This is also a great place. So because this is going to be a Google document, you'll be able to download a copy of this. And this is a great place for you to go in. If you've got some state guidelines, some district guidelines, add them here. If you've got some things that are applicable to the layout of your classroom, add them here. The great thing about this document is it's a living, breathing document. This thing is not final now that we're releasing it. It's going to be ongoing throughout the summer. So this is a great place for you to clarify that for your administration. Okay, classroom layout. Question that everybody's been thinking about. In fact, Richie, I think you spent a couple of days walking around measuring all of your classrooms in the school. Is that right?
We did, and me and the staff literally counted tiles yesterday, and we were, doing just like you're about to discuss here. We did the to figure out how many kids you can get in a room to be, I guess, COVID safe. And if anyone doesn't knows anything about the Perigal Band Room, it's a very small building, and our high school band room is only a 30 by 60 square foot room. So we're not going to get 160 people in that room. In fact, by those guidelines, I think we determined we're going to get 30. Was that what it was? Or was it, I can't remember if it was 30 or 50, but it wasn't that many. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So this is where there's a lot of questions. Are we going to have to socially distance? Are we not going to have to socially distance? And the reality is this is going to be a local decision. But I think there's some great insights. And if you want to hear more about that, last week, Barry and I unpacked some of the documents, one of them being the interim guidance for K-12 administrators from the CDC. And then there's another document as well that you can dive into. And we go in depth in those as to how they view social distancing in the classroom. So if you joined us last week, you might remember that the interim guidance for K-12 administrators had 3 different levels of spread within a community. The first is that there's no community spread. The second is that there's minimal to moderate community spread. And the third is there's substantial community spread. Now, how that relates to social distancing, in the no community spread, they did not recommend social distancing, just proactive measures that you're able to do. In the minimal to moderate, they did recommend social distancing. In the expansive, or excuse me, in the, I just slipped on the guideline. Barry, help me out. Substantial community spread. They said you need to consider closing the schools. So we tried to address all 3 of those situations in this document, and you can pick and choose the one that's most applicable to your particular district. So if you are a no community spread.
I do want to add that the word you use, Nick, you used the word proactive, and I just can't reinforce enough how much I think being proactive for our programs and through our programs we need to be, because that, again, that's going to be our success level, is how proactive and creative we are.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you're asked to socially distance, here's kind of the ways that you can calculate that. So we've kind of walked you through calculating the size of your room, how to come up with your total square footage. So you come up with that number, your total square footage, and then you divide it by 36. Because if you imagine each student is going to need a box that measures 6 feet wide by 6 feet long. So if they stand in the middle of it, it's 3 feet on either side, and they'll bump up to the box of another student. So each student will need 36 square feet if they're asked to socially distance by 6 feet. So you can divide your total square footage divided by 36, and that will give you the occupancy of your room if you're asked to socially distance for 6 feet. So you can see that information right there. And then we've got a little bit of information. Richie just touched on this. So, if the classroom is too small, Richie's already thinking, hey, outdoor rehearsals, relocate to a larger space, doing some of those smaller things. So, for you guys, Richie and Barry both, I mean, y'all are both stretching the limits of your facilities before all of this.
One of the answers on my end for band camp is that we're going to utilize classrooms throughout the building, and then we're not all confined in our rather small band room. We'll be able to do those section rehearsals or even micro section rehearsals in these different classrooms. So again, being creative is so paramount.
Yeah, that's great. Well, my question is what conversations are you having? So there, Barry is answering. Richie, anything that you might add? What conversations are you having right now to think through this?
Definitely talking to administrators and trying to figure out spaces that we can move into. And obviously, being outside is always the great answer. But we know weather can be weather, and it changes rapidly. But having those conversations now with administrators and trying to figure out, okay, where else could I go? And just mentally knowing that you are not going to be able to fully rehearse with your ensemble all together, maybe for a little bit. So go ahead and just start making that plan now. And just if you're a band director like me, just sometimes doesn't want to accept some realities. I mean, that's just one of those things. I'm just okay, we may have to stay in sectionals, and it's going to be okay, because some band is better than no band.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Thanks, Richie. Perfect. That's such a great thing to keep it in perspective. We probably need to accept this year's going to be different, and that's okay. We'll get through it. That's okay. Okay, the next 2 sections I want to talk about, we're going to go pretty quickly through these. And these are promoting behaviors that reduce spread and maintaining healthy environments. So I included these 2 in here because I'm going to be honest, all of the new CDC guidelines that are coming out have these 2 sections almost verbatim, whether it's for business, for schools, whatever group, even for your home, they're talking about these activities. And so I pulled these from the considerations for schools, But this is something that I think we're all going to have to be prepared for, encouraging students to stay home when appropriate, proper hand hygiene and etiquette, sneezing into our elbow, wearing cloth face coverings. We dove into that last week and what some of the documents talked about on that, and in ensuring we're adequately equipped with cleaning supplies. So again, these are the verbiage that are throughout these new CDC documents that I think we need to be prepared for. But there's one that I really want to highlight, and things that we need to talk about. Barry, one of the things that we keep hearing is that we shouldn't make things mandatory. And that's a little counter to maybe some summer programs or how programs have been handled in the past. How are you embracing that thought process and making that plan and accommodation for your program at this time?
Great question, Nick. A very important question. I think one of the largest things that I've learned in the last 2 months or so has been that we need to accept as individual directors that we're going to be existing in a blended type of instructional setting. So it's not going to be that we have our norm back. It doesn't appear that way. So we all have to be prepared for some type of blended instructional model. It goes without saying that we require our students to be at school and to be at rehearsals and to be at band camp and to be at the various things. But this year it's going to be a bit different because first off, we need to make sure that we don't include students that have any of the symptoms, and we'll get to that later on our different questions that we ask to ensure healthy students. But we can't bring an unhealthy student into our setting because that's obviously going to be a contagious situation. At the same time, we are just human. Our communities deserve our fullest level of respect if we expect them to respect us. So where you have a family that's reluctant to send their child to a rehearsal or whatever, we have to find a way to just to accommodate this. For instance, Nick, you and I were talking sidebar a while back about what about families that have elderly people that live in the home with them, or what about students that have brothers and sisters who have a chronic illness that exposure to the COVID virus would be a very detrimental thing. We're going to have to understand those. Obviously, we're going to have to do our homework and ask and provide, if nothing else, a questionnaire to each family that says, we understand, please share with us any information that is pertinent to our situation right now. But we need our kids on campus. I tell my students all the time, I can't teach you unless you're here. And I think now that's just been made so evident. But at the same time, we have to show our passion and our compassion to the various needs that each of these individuals have, whether they're an adult or whether they're a child. It's just so important that we look into everything and that we accommodate every possible thing we can.
Great perspective, Barry. That's really great. And you're 100% correct. Yeah.
And I think realistically, if we would all, we would cringe at the fact of saying it's okay to stay home. But in this case, you know, you're going to have to accommodate. You're going to have to, be very lenient. And as Barry said, accommodate and find a way to make it work.
And Richie, that not only pertains to our students and our adult workers that help us through band camp and even during the school day, but that also pertains to us directors. We need to make sure that we're not in a contagious manner. We need to take care of ourselves outside of the classroom to ensure that we're not that. And honestly, when we don't feel well, we probably need to stay home as well. And it's a blended level of instruction, and we'll get through this.
Yeah, that's a great point, Barry. I mean, I suspect for gentlemen such as yourself, pretty high octane and motivated, it's hard for you to stay still. But I think you have to give yourself peace and knowing that it's okay to do that, and now is the right time to do that. And so sometimes just acknowledging that is the first step. Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about disinfecting musical instruments. Now, last week we looked, NAM and NAFME has some great guidelines. Basically what we did is say, see the NAM and NAFME guidelines, and in one of our appendix here, Appendix B, we borrowed those, we have them in the document, and you can go full steam ahead and see what NAM has recommended. We also put out a video in all of this if you prefer video content that almost mirrors the NAM guidelines. So if you need something to share with your students or something like that. Of course, isopropyl alcohol is very affordable, but it is not universally suggested in the classroom. I know hard rubber mouthpieces, it can make it susceptible to cracking. And our orchestra technicians here do not recommend it on orchestra finishes because it can cause damage depending on the brand and the varnish that they use on those orchestra instruments. So that's why we recommend both Sani spray and alcohol. That's why we've contacted the manufacturers to ensure that they're on that EPA list. So for more information, you can see our video, and we've got that in detail in the appendix, which we're going to scroll down. We're not going to dive into thoroughly. But anybody that wants to dive into those or need a link, again, it's linked right here. It's referenced in our documents, and you can get some more information. But Richie, I think we got to talk about this. I mean, disinfecting your instruments was probably important before, but now it's really important. And how are you going to pass that expectation on to your students?
Sure. You know, we've already reached out, you know, to our music provider, and we're basically saying, hey, we need to start getting, all, massive quantities of this disinfectant. And what we're going to do is we're just going to train our kids how to properly clean your instrument. You know, at first, our front ensemble will be the only people we're going to allow to kind of bring instruments in and out of the band room. Everyone else, they've got to bring it from their car to the rehearsal, back to the car, and then we're going to teach them just basically just how to do, basic maintenance, things that in the past you're like, okay, hey, make sure you swab out your flute. Now it's like, hey, if you want us to continue having band and continue doing this and enjoying this, we have got to take this serious.
No, that's exactly right. So perfect.
If I can postlude Richie, I think it's also very important, just as he said, and Nick, you as well. I think we need to use our resources that we have geographically. I'm so blessed to have my music store, Amro Music of Memphis, as my close ally in supplying me information about specific instruments and whatnot. But again, we need to circle our network around our needs. And if you don't have information on what is the correct chemicals and whatnot to use, then reach out to someone.
Yeah, I'm happy to help with that. I have done a lot of research on cleaning agents for band rooms over the last week and comparing them to the EPA's website. So if anybody has any questions, I probably know the answer off the top of my head. Okay, let's talk about marching band. A lot of conversations about marching band. It's pretty time sensitive right now. It's all over the place. And of course, last week we saw the National Federation of State High School Associations and the Sports Medicine Advisory Committee put out a document. And that's a lot of what we've referenced here. And if anybody is interested, and they put out about 15 pages as it relates to marching band and broke it out into phases. So if you need something extremely structured, you can find the link here in our sources. They've got some great information as well. And then we also used the Missouri School Board Association had a great document, Pandemic Recovery Considerations, Reentry and Reopening of Schools. So we have kind of consolidated two sets of information here and created our considerations for marching band and summer camps. So Barry, you mentioned this a little bit, but how are you communicating this at this time to your how are you having these conversations as it relates to marching band, and how can we help fill that information void during this time?
Well, if you look at it, interestingly enough, my first hurdle is going to be to get my students at band camp. We do a 3-week-long band camp, and it's on our campus. We take up the whole campus, and right now I'm in communication with my administrator, my administrative team, and in showing them how we can abide by the various guidelines and what practices and what that will look like on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute, just as Richie said. Guys, listen, we're going to have to go back and reteach and emphasize the importance of cleaning instruments. That may be one of your largest hurdles. I don't know. In my district, it's going to be a mandatory situation where we clean chairs and stands and anything that might be used by a different person. There's a lot of considerations that are going into this. I think that we all have answers to most, if not every one of them, but they've got to be in such a way we can communicate them to our administration that here is number one, and here's what that will look like during my session with my students, and go down each one of those to provide them a level of comfort that we've thought this through, that we have this, that we're not going against the grain, we're going with the grain, and this is what it looks like on our campuses.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'll jump in there, Nick, and say, and I thought Barry did a great job. You last week talked about the easiest answer for an administrator is just to say no, and to go, man, there's this guideline, there's this guideline, there's this guideline. Why even bother? And man, it doesn't matter if you're a competitive marching band or if you're a non-competitive marching band. Regardless, trying to find a way. It's not going to be easy, but trying to find a way. And there's some really good ideas here, some really good guidelines that you could use, whatever choice and what direction you go.
You know, and if I can go back to last week just for a second, we talked about how we talked about the importance of not being in a combative conversation with your administration. I think that it's important that after we sit down and show them what our resolves are to these challenges, that if there is a slight pushback, that we listen and then we either readapt or re-explain our particular rhetoric and protocol. It's going to be a give and take, but we're all in this together, and putting up a wall between you and your administration just simply makes it extremely easy for the word no to come out. So just let's keep it open. We are all in this boat together in the realm of education. Administrators, teachers, students, parents, we're all in the same boat.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Barry. So if you're asked, here's another resource that we've put together for you. If you're asked to do a pre-rehearsal screening and ask questions, we put together some questions that you can find. We're going to scroll through them in Appendix D. We also went ahead and created a spreadsheet that you can use to track all of that. So if you've got some questions, you can just print this out.
That's really great, by the way. That's great.
Just say yes or no. And if you got to collect temperatures, we got a little spreadsheet for you. Drop their name, put the date and the temperature that was taken. So if you're asked to do that, here's what we've equipped you with to do that very quickly. And we're going to go through the questions in Appendix D. We just borrowed these. Again, we didn't write them. We just borrowed them. Okay. Inventory and equipment management. We borrowed this section from the Missouri School Board Considerations for Reentry. They recommended doing an inventory analysis so that you can develop a disinfecting plan for the assets that are owned by the district. And it's probably a really good idea. It's another proactive step to say, where are our school's assets and how are we going to keep these things clean? So Richie, and the other thing they talked about was trying to do our absolute best to create a one-on-one scenario where students aren't having to share for obvious reasons in a band classroom. So Richie, what conversations are you having right now as it relates to proactively solving that problem?
Well, I mean, you know, from our standpoint, it's looking and finding out, okay, how many school instruments are we sharing? And I know as I look to see who all these band directors that are on here, I know a lot of you come from small band programs where a lot of kids share instruments. And there's a lot of good information here that shows you how you can properly disinfect those instruments if indeed that, you know, has to happen. I know there are some guidelines out there that say that you do not need to share instruments. And if that's the case, then again, like we talked about, there's going to be some accommodations made, trying to figure something out there. You know, on our end, it's going to be tubas. I mean, and that's probably everybody. So for us, you know, we may have to divert some finances and maybe have to purchase some more tubas. But whatever your situation calls for, be creative and don't just say, well, we only got one tuba in the band room, so I guess that's all we're going to do. Don't throw your hands up in the air. Try to find a way. Shoot me an email. I'm very creative. We'll come up with something. We'll make something out of a carrot if we have to. I don't know, but.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Richie. But you know,
beginners as well as our high school students, and it's become obvious to us that our largest problem with shared instruments is not going to be at the high school level. It's going to be at the middle school level. So obviously, again, there's a lot of layers to this challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last couple of sections here, I'm going to breeze through because they're pretty self-explanatory. Planning for further potential closures. We talked about this last week in our document or in our session, but I think we have to plan on sporadic and sudden school closures for this fall. If somebody walks into our building that test positive for COVID, we could see the building closed from anywhere from 1 day to 1 week while they disinfect, and we're not going to get much notice. And if we see substantial community spread, the CDC is pretty direct in saying you should consider closing down your school. So I think we got to be prepared to that, to switch that, flip that switch between online and classroom-based learning. And so this is not an area that I'm an expert. And so what we just simply did was reference some of the resources that other educators have told us have been really helpful. But this is a great place for you to expand and talk through some of your curriculum and some of the things that you might be considering for at-home learning scenarios. But I do think we've got to be prepared to address this, because I think it's going to happen. And so we've just got to be thinking through it.
Well, and if I could say one thing on that too, go ahead. If I were a director and things come back, go ahead and make sure your students are aware, hey, we could be shut down for a day or week or whatever, and just already have that game plan in place, so that, like many of us back on March the 13th, we didn't know that was going to be the last time we were going to physically see our kids. Go and, when you get them back, open up all those means of communication that you can, and go and let them expect it. That way they're not like, oh man, we don't have band. They're already mentally prepared. Hey, we know that if XYZ happens, this is what we're going to do next, and just be.
And that's why it's important that we blend that. I use that word too many times tonight. Sorry, but that's where we are. But that we blend the level of responsibility, because we as directors, our parents that are on campus with us, and our students, we all have to remain healthy so that we aren't the cause for one of those shutdowns, because that could be the case.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, little section in here on vendors. The Missouri School Board document recommended getting a letter from vendors on how they're going to proactively prevent the spread of COVID-19. So again, this is written for from my perspective as we worked on it. So I wrote it on behalf of Amro Music. We've got a letter in here, but it might be something that you are considering. Hey, I've got some vendors that need to come into my building. And how am I going to proactively communicate that to my administration that A, I need them here, and B, they're going to help prevent the spread of COVID-19 too. So I've got a template letter in there for everybody that's an Amro a school in our territory. If you're not, be sure to have a conversation with your local music store about that. And then other considerations is just kind of the place that we found helpful information, but it didn't really meet any of the other criteria. So it made the team here just under other considerations. So let me walk through this, some of the appendix here at the end of the section. The first, we talked about this. This is the service vendor plan from Amro Music. And for any of the schools in our area, you can download a PDF, and there's a link to access that on our Amro letterhead by clicking this document here. And these are the plans that Amro is going to be taking to prevent the spread of COVID-19 while walking through the school. We talked about this. This is the full NAM/NAFME instrument cleaning guidelines. So if you need more clarity on that, again, we just borrowed this from NAM and NAFME, a great document. Talks about sterilizing versus disinfecting, instrument hygiene, mouthpieces, cleaning vocals. You guys can see and read everything that might be important to your program. But they went step by step here to talk about how to clean these instruments, and you can find that as a great resource. Appendix C, this was the quote that we borrowed off of the very beginning, and some of you might have seen this a couple of weeks ago, but all of these organizations endorsed this joint statement for the importance of arts, and this is just something we all need to know about. There's some really big names in there: Save the Music Foundation, Give a Note, Hal Leonard, Daddario, Conn-Selmer, CMA Foundation, NAM, some big organizations in there that have endorsed this statement. So Music for All, so a lot of nonprofit and industry people, and you can see here the statement that they endorse. So this is just more firepower, more consideration for your administrator, their take on the importance of arts in our school. And then the last thing we talked about this, the critical question survey. These are the questions. And again, we just borrowed these. So if we already referenced these documents, the Google spreadsheet, again, you can just hit Control to access these documents and click on them. But these are the questions that we found as a template. Is anybody displaying these symptoms? And these are the symptoms right off the CDC website. Have you had a fever of 100.4 or greater? Has anyone in your household tested positive for COVID or been in contact with somebody that's tested positive? And do you presently have any pending tests? You can rewrite this to be whatever your state's recommendations, whatever the questions are. These are not set in stone. This is just an example of something that you can consider doing. But if your school asks you to do a survey and they don't provide the survey questions, here's a great place that you can start. So, okay, that walks us through the entire document. Boy, we covered a lot of ground tonight. So,
We did.
Barry, we wrote this document and we worked on it. And by wrote, I mean we just consolidated a lot of things applicable to music educators. If you haven't received any guidelines, what can we do with this information? What should be our next step in this scenario?
Well, obviously that first step is just communication with your administration. And I think that I would strongly encourage you to start with your building principal. That's the person that you answer to. And if we're going to do a true bottom up, we need to get each of the clicks. So communicate with your principal, conversing with him or her about your understanding of the challenges and also your plan of attack for the resolves to these questions. And build the allies that you need at the very lowest level, and a lot of the dissemination of information upward will take place for you. But it's all going to be a communication key here. I have been in contact with my building principal nearly daily, and I'm talking 7 days a week, since early April, trying to find out information from her, the latest, greatest information. And for sure, as each of these different guidelines has come down, they've all been slightly different, especially in the type of wording that they use. Some of them come off with a connotation of negativity. Some of them are more positive. And I wanted to feel what she was feeling. I think it's important that I understand her perspective, because I feel comfortable that she understands mine. So I think your first step, if that was your question, Nick, I think it's just communicate.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Now,
Richie,
well, the cool thing about this document too, Nick, is there's so much information out there. It's almost information overload. This document, I think, does a great job of just picking out all the, some good details, and also referencing in there. So you can always just, okay, if you want a little more information about this one thing, okay, here it is. And it's not just like, a 20-page dissertation on just, one topic. So that's the good thing about it.
Yeah, and I don't think that anybody involved in this thinks that this document is the end-all, do-all, but I just am so passionate that I think everybody should download this, use it for your benefit. Hopefully it will fit you, but if it doesn't, tear it apart and come back to me and tell me where we're wrong and what we need to do to improve the document itself. I'm not a sit-still person, and I feel like that I needed something to get me going in a single direction. Just as Richie said, I became informationally overloaded. It was too much for my 4 brain cells to take on. And as this all started to take shape, Nick, we began this, I looked back on my records, we began this, April 14th was the initial conversation that you and I had. And please download this, tear it apart if you need be, use it if you can, but please download it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think, and we do have to remind ourselves, this document is not intended to be the end-all be-all. It's supposed to be a congregation of ideas and a template that you can use to apply to your particular program. So
I told my principal that I felt what this was a consolidation of all the guidelines and all the protocols put into a place where they can be compared, and then it offered a real world resolve again for these various things. I explained to her this isn't the Bible by any means, but it's definitely a useful document to move us forward.
Yeah. So Richie, I think the way that Tennessee and Arkansas are handling this are two very different. So I want to kind of circle this around, because in Arkansas, a directive has been put out, but it doesn't really address band. And what it does, it doesn't really address it a whole lot. So what are the next steps if you're in a state like that, where maybe it's been addressed, but maybe not as thoroughly as we would like?
Right. Well, obviously, if you're an Arkansas band, like you know that we can practice, marching, we can practice drumline, front ensemble, color guard, but the musical instruments are just off limits and prohibited until the end of June. And June 30th, they're going to come back with a new directive. In my conversations with those that are on the Economic Recovery Task Force for the governor, they're basically indicated to me they kind of punted on the musical instruments because they're wanting a little more information. I know we have our upper executive advisory committee that's going to be working on putting some guidelines together. And for those guys, I also, once you get this folder that's going to be shared with you, I put in there the Texas UIL guidelines that they've adopted for them to go back and start rehearsing with the instruments on June the 8th. Oklahoma, as well. I've talked to Broken Arrow, talked to several directors out there in Oklahoma, and it's full steam ahead as well. They're allowing each individual district to make their own mind, and the state government's been like, we understand that band may not look the same in Tulsa as it does in Oklahoma City, so we're just we're letting you make those decisions. So for now, I would say in Arkansas, I'm really encouraged by those that are on the executive advisory committee who are going to be putting these ideas together, and I think we've got a lot of good information for them to kind of base their decisions and base some of their guidelines that they push out to the Arkansas Activities Association, so that AAA feels confident in what we put out. I know in my conversations with Miss Reynolds, Lance Taylor's, he's waiting on us to basically present something to him for him to take to the board.
Yeah, and I think the point here that we can't all lose sight of is we can't assume that the people that are in these decision-making positions know as much about band as we do. And so, maybe they have a medical background, maybe they played in the band, maybe they didn't. But, they might not have all of the data that we have because they don't live in that world every single day. So, I don't think we should take that part for granted, that that people may know what we know. And so I don't think we should be hesitant to share and just say, hey, wanted to bring this to your attention. I know you're making some challenging decisions and thought this might offer some clarity to some of the decisions you have to make. So we shouldn't take that for granted, I don't think, in this situation. So. Okay, well, gentlemen, we are approaching it as 9 minutes till, but before we sign off, I want to ask, do you have any closing thoughts or advice that we want to share to the group? Richie, what's on your mind before we call it a night?
For me and for everyone out there listening, the obvious thing to say is, well, of course, the easy thing right now is just put your focus on marching band. Well, even if we take our focus off marching band, to not give up on the next class, just for making for reasons of like, well, it's just there's too many things, there's too many balls, there's too many things that I've got to get rolling, and I just we all saw a senior class that lost some of the best memories that they're going to have at the end of their senior year. And so for us as a music educator, I think we would all consider our bands, hopefully you consider your band a band family, and you consider, everything that that you're going to provide to those kids. For a lot of you, that's probably the only reason they come to school. I know for Paragould, that's a large majority of kids are going to be in that boat. So I would just want to encourage you to don't accept no, try to find a way. And the other thing I want to say is this: if you don't want to go eat at Chili's, don't go eat at Chili's. Stay at home, okay? Mm-hmm. But for those who want to go eat at Chili's, those who want to come back and do band, those who want to have some kind of a normalcy, it is our responsibility to find a way to safely, do it, but to find a way for us to be able to come back and for our kids and for our students, and not egotistical for a director or anything like that. It's all about the kids. Keep the focus on the kids, and a senior year for some and for first experiences for others, this passion that we all have, and we all love band, and this is why we teach. And so that would just be my encouragement to you tonight as you think about what it looks moving forward for you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Thanks, Richie. And now, thanks to you, I'm going to be thinking about Southwestern egg rolls from Chili's all the way home. I appreciate it. Barry, what about you, man? What closing thoughts do you have?
I'm going to play back Richie's statement. I can't say anything is any better than what he said. I just want to refocus us all on why we adults stayed in band when we were in middle school, junior high, and high school, and then extrapolate that over to our students today. Those lifelong memories, those lifelong experiences those unique experiences that we were provided when we were in school is absolutely the reason that students continue on. We might say it's this or it's that. No, it's those individual friendships and the bonding and just the things that our programs nationwide provide for students. So I challenge everybody here tonight. I challenge you to illustrate 3 things for me. I want you to illustrate your conviction to teaching your students, because it's important. It's highly important that we bring music into our children's lives and we do it the way we do it. I want you to illustrate your resiliency for change. We're going to have some change forced upon us. Embrace that. Stand fast, as Richie said. Don't take no for an answer, but be resilient that we're going to get our way through this. And lastly, please illustrate your creativity and innovation, because there is where your path to success is going to be derived. Use your network. Call Nick at AMRO. I think we're going to post our email addresses. I so enjoyed the emails I got last week, and I hope I get a million more this week. I just want to help you. I want you to do what you do, because I'm learning from you, and Nick and Richie and CJ helping us out. Thank you all. Thank you to AMRO and that family for hubbing this, if you will, so that we could get together and have these discussions. And this document that we have, I so hope and pray that you will download it and use it to the best of your ability. And please push back with things that you think we could add to it or change. But best of luck to you guys. And I look forward to getting out and seeing as many of you as I possibly can, and want to help you in any way I possibly can. Richie, just good luck in the season. Congratulations on all the history of things that you've done there. And just carry on. And if I can help you, you know that I'm just a phone call away.
Ditto back at you. And I want to say this, a huge shout out to the AMRO team, Nick and CJ, LaDonna, John Easley. I mean, all of them. I mean, you guys are a class act, and it just to realize that, hey, we need to be doing something. We need to be proactive, not sitting back and waiting. I mean, you talking about leading on the forefront. Congratulations. And I'm proud to be with you on this.
Well, thank you. I have to admit, some days it feels like we're on a road trip without a map, but when we get there, it's going to be awesome. That's all I know, is when we get there, it's going to be awesome. So on that note, CJ just posted the link to the Google Drive. You can find it in the Zoom webinar chat. Go check it out. All of the resources are there. Our considerations for a safe return to the classroom are there. Feel free to download the document. This document is not done. We're going to keep working on this document. As more information comes out, as we learn more, we're going to keep adding to it. Again, we talked about this last week. One of the things I've learned as a result of COVID-19, it's okay to change your mind. So we're going to keep moving forward. We're going to move forward together. And as we learn more information, we're going to keep reflecting that in that document. So from all of us here at AMRO Music, to our panelists, thank you so much. Y'all were absolutely awesome. Next week, Marcia Neal, recruiting through the summer. Please come and join us. Be looking out for more information on that. It's going to be an awesome conversation from a bundle of joy and energy in Miss Marcia Neal. It's going to be great. But from all of us, have a great day. Stay safe, everyone, and let us know how we can help you during this COVID-19 era.
See you, everybody.
God bless, and wash your hands.